Welcome to another episode of Recipe to Success. This one has been highly anticipated, one that we've been trying to work on for a while, and I know how much you guys love the real estate ones, so this one's going to be special. Barry, how's it going?
It's going good. How you doing?
I'm good. Finally made it happen.
Finally.
I know, and it's going to be such a valuable episode. I'm really excited for everyone to, watch and give their thoughts. So let's start with, introduction. Who are you? Because obviously you're a man that maybe people don't know necessarily, but obviously in the business world, you've got a great network and achieved a lot of success. So let's enlighten people of, who Barry is.
Kind words, bro. First of all, I want to say thanks for bringing me on. And I want to commend you on the podcast. It's really good work. It's nice that you're getting people on that might perhaps not have as huge a reach. But me, I'm just a property guy. Nothing out of the ordinary. We've got several parts in the property business. The main one being we sell new build apartments, primarily in London, and we've now expanded to Dubai and also Africa, the west coast of Africa. So we deal in mainly new build properties all around London, in Dubai, and obviously the business is growing. LMC Capital is growing, so we're going to be in West Africa, which we've just launched, and hopefully Asia next year as well. That's the main part of the business.
Okay, so let's break it down in layman's terms for anyone that has no knowledge of the property industry, especially for the young listeners. What is it? What is involved in that? You said Africa, Dubai, London, obviously multiple locations that you're working on property. Like, what does your day to day look like, and what essentially does your business do in layman's terms?
In layman's terms, we sell property. They're just new properties, so stuff that's either built or going to be built. We started selling properties in London, so we work with some of the biggest names in the industry, people like Barclay, Barratt, Ballymore. These are the sort of brands we work with, and it's quite important that we do that because we want to work with the very best. We want to make sure people that are spending their hard-earned money, investing their money, or maybe they might be buying their first home, that they have access to the very best out there. But to simply break it down, we sell new build to first-time buyers in the UK. We also sell new build investment properties to people abroad. This is why we've reached out into Africa. So we found there's a lot of investors in West Africa, as well as other parts of Africa, which we've worked in Kenya and South Africa as well as the Middle East, hence why the Dubai office. So these people want to buy properties in London for investment, for long-term gains. So we work with those people. We can bring them to London and give them a range of options, anything ranging from like the bottom end at 300,000 all the way up to something worth 30 million, depending on budget. So the international market can come and buy here, but we also service the local market as well. So investors, first-time buyers, we work with developers who offer help to buy scheme for people with perhaps lower earning potential and lower deposits, because you got 5% deposit is more affordable for most people. So that's the main sort of market that we're in. There's other stuff we do, but that's the primary part of the business.
Okay, so that's LMC, and that's kind of what you're doing at the moment. Let's talk about your upbringing, how all of that led to where you are now, and kind of just showing people the journey, because I think sometimes the people look at the end product and they think, oh, that's the finished article, this man, he's done this and this and that. But what they don't realize is how much you went through to get to that side. Yeah. So let's start, extremely young. Let's talk about where you were born and kind of the initial stages.
Yeah. So I'm mixed. I'm half Indian, half English. I was actually born in India. So the community of people we're from are known as Anglo-Indians. So my ancestors would have been British, would have come over to India in the East India Company, and there would have been a mix at some point between the English and the local Indians. So I'm Anglo-Indian, born in India, spent some of my youth there, and obviously because my ancestors were British, we came over in the late 90s, and just moved to London. When I was younger, actually, the whole interest in property began because I wanted to be an architect. And when
How old was that? How old were you then?
I would say probably around 9 or 10. So I was very intrigued by different buildings, different style of buildings, architecture in general. I really appreciated property, and there's such vast differences in the styles, and the way properties are built and how they, you see tower blocks and then you see different villas, and I was always intrigued by the way property is put together. How are they built? How are they made? And I remember when I was younger, I was in India as a kid, and we were driving past a part which is now very developed, but in those days it wasn't. And we saw villas going up, properties being built. And I asked my aunt, my mum's older sister, who builds these properties? So she was explaining to me, that an architect will come in and design it. And then once it's designed, you'll get somebody to come in and build it. So that's where my love for property first began. That's when I first was able to identify that I like this. And as I got older, I thought, look, I want to be an architect. When I got to college, somebody said it's going to be 7 years at university, and I was like, I'm not doing that. So now, instead of being an architect, I employ architects, because we've got the development side of the business as well, which is separate to LMC Capital. But that's where it all began. Had a good upbringing as a child. We were in India, moved to England in the late 90s. I would have been probably around 12, 13 years old, and just moved to London. It's quite easy to fit in really here because it's so multicultural, and London's a great spot for property as well, because you can drive down one street and you've got Georgian buildings, and then you can drive down another street and you've got brand new, newly built apartments, which are really fancy and different looking. So yeah, that's kind of where it stems from, and my early life essentially.
Okay, and so you mentioned you moved to Britain. When you settled in, like, how old were you at that point?
Around 12.
12. So you had started secondary school.
Just started secondary school, yeah.
So what was that adjustment like? I think where I'm going with this is perspective, because obviously you've grown up in a slightly different place. Obviously your adult years had been predominantly here, but you had a lot more awareness of what was going on there. And I think in India there's quite a big gap between the rich and poor as well. Similar parts, Pakistan, Bangladesh, very, very similar. So let's talk about that a little bit, and then how that affected your perspective.
Adjusting was, actually, I didn't mention that, but actually when we first moved here, we moved to Cornwall. So that was really difficult, because adjusting with the accent and all of that was difficult as a school, what school children are like. And there was a bit of bullying and stuff there, but it wasn't nothing major. We weren't there for too long. But when we moved to London, I found that it was quite easy to sort of integrate in school. It was a massive change, because in India, growing up, my parents, I'm not from a rich family or like from a business-minded family at all. My parents are just normal, average working people, and always have been. But when we moved to London, it was a bit difficult to adjust, but it was so multicultural, and there was a lot of, where I grew up, there was such a huge and eclectic mix of people. There was a lot of Somalis.
It's a melting pot.
Yeah, melting pot of just all these different cultures, and just felt at home. So it was difficult to begin with. Obviously, the accent wasn't there. So it was visibly noticeable that, these guys are not from around here. They weren't born here. So in the beginning, it didn't feel like we belonged. Me and my younger brother, that is. But over time, it got easier, and my childhood was fairly good. Grew up in Southeast London on a council estate, which was tough. Saw a lot of things happen to friends and other people around me, because you hear about it on the news, like people being stabbed and all this kind of stuff. And it doesn't hit you until you see it, but I'd witnessed these things happening to people around me in my school. So that was tough, but the good thing was our parents were very sort of on the ball with keeping us in check, making sure we were with the right people, not going out late night, and we just had a fairly normal upbringing. Adjusting was a bit difficult, but I think fairly quickly we sort of just got on. You know what children are like, you just make friends, and you just go from there.
What was your school life like in terms of pursuing certain paths?
To be honest, the architect thing was in the back of my mind, but when I was in school, I'd like to imagine that I was somewhat academic. I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. I know that sounds so cliche and everybody says it, but actually when I do something, I really want to do it properly, do it really well. So I found that in school, I just wanted to, whatever I did it to the best of my ability. and it took some, in the early days, I wouldn't have had like a specific route that I wanted to take. All I knew is I wanted to be an architect, but I didn't sort of pursue any specific academic things that would allow me to do that. I mean, we obviously didn't even have the support network. Now when I look back, actually, nobody sat down with me as a 12, 13-year-old and asked, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? And then give me advice on how I should get there. It's only when I got to sort of college, university age that, I sort of learned about what I need to be doing in order to pursue certain things. But I'd like to imagine I was studious. I wasn't too unruly. Again, this comes down to my parents making sure that they were on top of things, because where I grew up, it was really rough. I grew up in Woolwich in southeast London, so there was a lot happening with the youth, not enough for the youth to do. But I also played cricket, so cricket was a really good thing because it kept us very busy. I went on to play age group county cricket for Middlesex. My brother went on to play professionally for Kent, so our summers were basically eaten up with cricket, and outside of the summer we'd be training. That's all we did from the age of sort of 13, 14 when we first started playing cricket at a club, all the way up until I was 19, 20. I didn't obviously make the professional grade, so I then decided I want to be involved in business. But yeah, cricket really helped. Being involved in sort of team sports.
Any sport essentially gives you discipline as well, and when it's a team sport, you just build different kind of characteristics that are going to help you lay it down.
100%. I think that really helped as well because actually with the team sport, there's so many facets to playing in a team that you build camaraderie. You know how to communicate with people, work together as a team. How you have a single goal and how everybody contributes to that goal and who has their own specific how they participate within that in order to bring that to fruition. So I learned a lot. Actually, now when I think back, at the time I never realized, but when I look back at it, I can sort of see how that really benefited myself at that time.
So what made you go into the property or business route? I mean, obviously at that time you were thinking in the back of your mind, architect, you were quite intellectual, you were good at studies. Where did that then go from college to uni to then, stumbling across business or any kind of venture?
Yeah. It was really simple, actually. A good friend of mine who I played cricket with, he'll be watching this. Him and myself, we wanted to basically become property developers. I knew that sort of at the age of 16, 17, I don't want to spend 7 years at university, come out, and then I'm in my 30s before I'm making proper money as an architect. So I was about 18. And at the time we were having a conversation about how do we get into the property game. And the simplest, quickest way to do it was to become an estate agent. So he went off and got some experience at an agency. I went off and got some experience at an agency. And we kind of learned everything inside out. And then we basically took those blueprints that we got from them for the companies we work for. And we basically had everything that we needed. So we launched our first business at the age of 18 in Greenwich. It was really tough at the time. We were the only brown boys on the block on a street full of, traditional estate agents. And it was very tough. We launched it. Were very fortunate. We walked past the shop and we saw a little sign in the window. It used to be an old insurance shop that said property to rent, £800 a month, all inclusive. And we were like, wow, we can actually do this. So we opened our first agency. It took a few years to build. I left that and I decided to go to university, but that's where it started. And that's where we had the idea, look, we weren't able to develop properties at that age because we didn't have the money. We didn't have the know-how. So the only way that we could get into that was let's start an estate agency. Then we understand the market, we understand the trends, we understand what it takes to do certain things like refurbishments and all of that, because we wanted to sort of progress over time. And that was a really good sort of stepping stone for us. And it just went on from there. But that's where it all started. I went off a couple of years after into the business, and I decided I wanted to go to university and study again. And I went and did a business degree with finance. And then after I came out of that, I wanted to do some corporate work. So I did a bunch of things in IT, and I worked for the government as well. And then I'd had some money saved up because I used to, funny enough, I used to trade the stock market. and not just for the stock market, but also foreign exchange. And I had a sizable amount of money that I wanted to invest. And I went back to the same guy I started the first business with, and I said, look, I want to buy a couple of houses and just rent them. And he gave me the idea. He said, look, why don't we just do what we had discussed when we were 18? Why don't we start developing? If you've got this chunk of money, let's form a company and we can go ahead and we can just start developing and you'll make more. He goes, fair enough, you can get 2 houses. You're going to put them on rent, make a bit of money, but then they're just sitting there. But if we're developing, you can actually make a lot more back. Maybe we can hold some properties, add them to a portfolio, and then we can reinvest the profits we make into more projects. And that's how we got into the development side. But then I saw how much agents were charging, 2%, 2% on every sale, because we were using agents as well. We had the agency, but for conflict of interest, we normally gave that business out to somebody else for them to sell it. Because, as a developer, you can sell your own properties, but it's probably better to get somebody third party in. And then I started looking at the new build sector. So that's how LMC Capital sort of came around and came about. And I said, look, I'll just do it with bigger developers who are developing thousands of properties. And we've got access to marketing. Everything is digital nowadays. So you don't actually even have to be physically present in a location. And that's how that all sort of came about. Sorry, I know I went on for quite a while.
No.
I was just trying to break it down because I'm thinking back now about how this all began and how we've got to this point now.
No, it's nice. I think also sometimes in day-to-day life, you don't tend to reflect about a lot of these things and the journey. So sometimes when we have these conversations, it's like it actually brings out a lot of memories. Mm-hmm. I've had a few guests that have said, you know what, like it was like a therapy session. Like it helped me uncover some of the things that, I couldn't really uncover, because sometimes you don't really have these conversations, especially, when our lives are so busy, our phones are constantly distracting us. So sometimes to just be nice and quiet and have a conversation it's rare.
Yeah, so it's funny, I haven't actually reflected on that before. I've not actually sat down to think about that process and how I got here. But yeah, you're right. It's like therapy, to think back and actually go back through all the steps. I think we get so busy with work and with business. You know what it's like, you run your own business. It's non-stop. I mean, you can never switch off, especially if you're in a service sort of based business where you're providing a service to people. And I just don't have the time to sit down and reflect and be grateful even for all the wonderful things I have, being where I'm from. I mean, if you'd seen where I grew up and the people I was around and the kind of estate I lived on, the school I went to, you'd never imagine. I would never have thought I'd be in this position. So yeah, you're right. It's good to reflect and good. It's like therapy. 100% agree with you on that.
So you spoke about the kind of step-by-step process of how you went from that first business to LMC. Mm-hmm. What I want to know is that in your early days of LMC, what did that look like? Because I know from my journey, like the first 2 years is brutal. And then if you grow on the other side, then, there's new challenges. Mm-hmm. But that first 2 years, how did that look? Because knowing you off camera as well, like we've had these conversations where, I really respect your business. I think, the model is fantastic. You've obviously gone through trial and error as well to get there. But you've essentially built a business that, needs very little day-to-day kind of maintenance, but you're financially free. And you've achieved the goals that are important to you. And that kind of unlocked a little bit of a thought process for me as well, because like most people, they either go on the journey where they're just going to accept an average lifestyle, and then you have the others that are go-getters but just have random numbers in their head, like a number that they think is big enough. So, I want to be a millionaire, or I want to make 100 million. Like they'll just have these random kind of targets, but no one actually then calculates what you actually need. Because maybe not everyone needs £1 million. Some people need 300 grand a year and they're nice and comfortable. So let's talk about that a little bit. The early years of LMC and, how you then got to a model which, suited your lifestyle.
Yeah, I think that's quite important, just the lifestyle. I mean, you touched it on that. But the first 2 years were a struggle. LMC was actually born off of the back of, so that first business I had established with a friend of mine, I'd left, and then I'd come back to that business after university and when I had some money. And when I started to invest in properties, I actually went back into that business, helping them on some other stuff that they were doing in terms of like the serviced accommodation side of things. And instead of becoming a director on the firm again and being sort of involved on the physical paperwork, I'd set up LMC Capital as a subsidiary, or my company that would invoice the main company for the work and time I put in. That gave me the flexibility as well to be, I suppose, a shareholder in the business without actually being a shareholder. And that's how LMC was born. So it was never actually set up as a company to be doing new build sales or developments of its own. So a few years into that, we then set up another. So on the back of the first business, we'd set up another company, and that was our development company. So there was 4 partners on there, 2 of whom I got on really well with, one of whom, and we've spoken about this off camera, I did not get on with for many reasons. I'm not going to put that up on here, but let's just say that him and me clashed a lot. I am a very simple guy with business. I like to do business straight, without any sort of issues whatsoever. I like to make sure that everything's fair, and we just didn't align. So we'd set up, while we were doing the development business, we'd set up a new build homes sales business within that brand, but it was a sub brand. And I'd run it with him for pretty much a year, and I'd learned a lot of what the industry required and how I needed to get into this. And I saw that it makes money. I stepped away from a lot of money with that business as well. We're talking 6 figures or more at the time, but I was able to walk away from that because I just wanted a clean conscience. I didn't want to have anything to do with that. So that kind of gave me the blueprint. So even that was an L, but it was actually a W, because it taught me a lot about the business and also how not to do that business. But because LMC was already running and functioning, it was very easy to transition from what I was doing with the other business and then just move that over. Because what LMC is we are a property company, we're an investment specialist company, but actually we are just a marketing agency. Essentially, all estate agents are marketers. That's all they are. It's make it sound really technical, and we do this and that and we bring value, but the real value is in being able to sell something, and that's essentially what we do. But yeah, so I learned from that experience. When we were doing the development business, I had LMC on the side, and I'd learned a lot about the new build sector, and then I was able to transition that across and do that myself because I wasn't getting on with one of the guys in that business. So I basically parted from that business. They continued doing that, and I know that they still continue to do that, but we just do it differently, and we do the same thing, but we do it differently, and we do it better. So I'd like to imagine we do it better. So that was the first 2 years were very difficult, very, very difficult, because actually getting the right strategies in place, because selling property is not like selling a phone or like a $5.99 or $9.99 product you sell online. It's people spending £500,000 plus on average. In London, the average property price is 470 odd thousand. So it's a lot of money, and it's not easy to sell, especially to people who aren't actively. So for example, we don't sell our properties on Rightmove or Zoopla. We can't. We have to advertise in different ways. So it's actually, when I really when I think about it, it's quite impressive that we're able to turn over what we turn over without Zoopla and Rightmove, because we are basically targeting people on social media, using Google, using people like yourself to assist us, with our digital campaigns and stuff like that. So that's what we're doing. So the first 2 years was really difficult. I have a good team around me. I've got a few good people around me. One in particular who's stuck with me for several years now, and he's really, shout out Mo, if you're watching, Mo, has really helped me. He's done everything I've asked him to do, and it's really important. I've had a good team around me. So that's what really helped LMC sort of grow. But in business, there are some exceptions I've found, but I think most people that I've spoken to, and I know some really serious business people, like multi-millionaires, billionaires even, and 99% of them will tell you that it's hard work. And the 2 key things I found which helped me was perseverance, but being consistently perseverant. If you can be consistently perseverant with your business, and you know what the vision is, and you just work tirelessly towards that, and eventually something will give. Something will give, definitely, bro. And tawakkul is really important for me. I don't want to sound exorbitantly pious, but as a Muslim, for me, like when I put my trust in Allah and I lay down the bricks, as I lay them down, I have trust that He will make it work. 100% of the time it's worked, and that's really, really helped me.
Okay. And I want to go back a little bit based on something that you said, or a couple of things that you said. So you mentioned obviously the partner story. We won't go into too much detail about that individual, but I do want to talk about partners in general, because you then went on to say, you know, how important it was to have a good team around you. And I think anyone in business can agree that, you know, you always need a team around you. You're only one individual. There's only so much you can do. You're not scalable. But there's a big difference between a team necessarily and partners as well. And I get this DM at least 4 times a week about, should I go into business with a partner? Should I get a partner? Why do I need a partner? Should I do it by myself? So for all those people that, you know, are curious, you've had the experience with and without. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I've actually spoken about this before, but having partners is it's very nuanced. In the sense that you could do business, you won't really know what somebody's like until you actually sit down and do business with them, right? But my approach is a bit different now, because I've learned that because your thought process doesn't always align, and you might have different visions and different ways of working and different things to prioritize. What I've done over the years is, for example, I just said to you, Mo, as a young guy, came to me at the age of 18, and he said he'd work for me for free for 6 months, and I put it to the test, and he worked for 6 months. I paid his travel and I bought him lunch, but he's now a shareholder in my business. But he actually earned that, and he put in way more than anybody else I've ever worked with. But no, there's definitely, sometimes you need business partners. People are more invested, I feel. So what I've done with people that I've given shareholding in my businesses to has been on merit. We've had targets, we've had certain expectations met, and when they deliver, it just makes sense to be able to give them a share. It doesn't have to be huge, but they're invested emotionally as well, because then they feel like they're part of that business. You know, they're working towards a common goal. Because if sometimes you have employees in our industry, one of the biggest challenges is having people and retaining people. In the estate agency business, in the property business in general, turnover is so high. Staff turnover is so high.
It's a tough business.
It's a very tough business, because somebody else offers somebody $5,000 a year more, they'll leave because they want more money.
And some people just leave the trade because they can't do the sales, and they can't do that relentless attitude.
Definitely. So I would never discourage somebody from having business partners, but I think really doing a lot of due diligence on the person you're going to be doing business with, and what do they have to offer really. My mistake was, in the previous business, I didn't really do enough due diligence on that person. I went on the back of somebody telling me that this person was solid and they've got something to offer. So I was okay with that. But maybe I should have spent a bit more time with the due diligence. So if you are going to take a partner, I'd say definitely consider it, but see what they have to offer. See what their track record is. You know, what do other people say about them? And that's really, really important in business. I think your the way people view you, your integrity, for me, like, the way people see me is really, really important. Like, you know, I want people to be able to do business with me because they trust me. And at our level, we're not a Tesla or a Google or Amazon. We're not that size. People buy from people at this level. They don't buy from brands. I mean, because we're not that kind of brand. So it's really, really important that you as a person and the people representing you in your business are trustworthy, are seen to be trustworthy, are doing the right things, you know, and have the client's best interest at the heart. And the people around me now basically follow that ethos. And unfortunately, people I've done business with in the past, some have and some haven't. I'm not saying everybody I've done business with that have been business partners are terrible. So I wouldn't want to tell a young person, don't take somebody on, but see what they have to offer. I think that's the main thing.
I think also with partners, it's always good to get, you know, or work with even partners or investors. It's good to get individuals that complement your weaknesses. So like, if you know that, okay, I'm great at sales and marketing, get someone who's good at recruitment or accounts or other areas of the, you know, other functions of the business. That way you're not treading on each other's toes, but also you guys are working in the same direction towards a goal, and you're doing the things that you're the best at.
100%, I agree with that, because like I've been having conversations with people. I get these conversations all the time. Oh, I've got a business idea. Do you want to invest? Do you want to jump on board? Blah, blah, blah. Then I sit down and I think, what do I have to offer? And what I can offer is, I mean, I'm good on the property side of things, but I know how to scale business as well. So If I see that there's a business opportunity where I can come on board and I can actually offer value in the sense that I can help them grow the business, or I can take it in different avenues, different directions where they can make more money, then I'll seriously consider a partnership there. But then the inverse is also true. So if you're looking to expand your business or do something or bring partners on, then you've got to have that same mindset. What does that person offer? If it's just money, you can get money anywhere. Like, somebody could come to me with a great business idea, or what they think is a great business idea, and I could pump 100 grand, 200 grand, 300 grand into it. But if I'm not able to scale it, that money is just down the drain. Do you see what I'm saying? Because it's no point just putting money in, because you need to have a strategy to be able to grow that business. But if you don't have the right person that can come up with that strategy or draw that up and have sort of a vision of where this will go and how it will go, the money is pointless. So sometimes it's more than just money as well. It's, you know, what that person has to offer. I think that's the main thing.
So through that journey in LMC, past the years where, you know, you're trying to figure things out, and then now things are starting doing well, at what point did you, because obviously at this point you've made a bit of money, you're not broke anymore, you're not, you know, just stuck in hopelessness, you've achieved something. But that also means maybe you've ticked off a few, you know, things on your checklist, and sometimes at that point you then need a new level of motivation, or you need to kind of assess your goals a little bit of what do I actually want for the next few years or long term. So at what point did you kind of realize that and experience, okay, you know what, I'm not broke anymore, but now I need to achieve this, or I need to, you know what, have a better work-life balance, or things like that?
We were going to touch on that earlier, actually, the work-life balance. I think that for me has always been the most important thing. I think most people, how much do you need to live? 50, 60, 70 grand a year. I think most people can live on that. Maybe in London a bit more because things are more expensive. But in my mind, it was always about a couple of years into the business when I started to see turnover reaching, you know, above the 6-figure level. Then I kind of looked at myself, so I'm really fortunate. I've got kids, I'm a husband, I'm a father, and those things are quite important to me, having time for my family. And a couple of years in, as I started making sort of what I'd consider decent money, I thought to myself, look, I need to take a little bit of a step back. The whole point of being self-employed is to be able to, for me personally, this is not for everybody, but I mean, it's a very subjective thing. But for me personally, it's about having time for the family, having a really, the ability to just get up and go when you want, and having enough finances in order to do that. And I can't put a figure on it, but if it's £250,000 a year, that's enough. Especially if you run a lean operation like mine. Mine is not a huge, like, we're not a huge organization. We don't have fancy offices in Knightsbridge. That's just not how we have to do our business. If it was required, I would do it. But for me, it's about having time with the kids, having time with my wife, being able to go away several times a year. But alongside that as well, as I said, I mean, the work-life balance was important, but this is why I've expanded, because there's only so much you can do in London. I feel like I've got London on lock, in the sense that we're doing good business here. We're making really good money. It's a very lean operation. Why don't I just take it global? And this is why we went to Africa. This is why we went to Dubai, because, you know, the world is a huge place, but actually it's very accessible. You can get to pretty much anywhere in the world within 24 hours. So that gives me travel opportunities and this excuse to travel away. When I went to Africa to set up an office there, I took my wife with me. It was a bit of a break for her. Imagine if you're in a 9 to 5 and you have to travel abroad, and, you know, you can't just take time off and just tell your boss, I want to go away with my wife for a week or 2 weeks or however long. But that, for me, flexibility was really, really important. And when LMC got to the point where I was earning what I felt was a decent amount of money, not that I've taken my foot off the gas, but it's just like it affords me more time. And the way I've built the business is that it's so lean and so simplified. It's genius, but it's also simplified at the same time. I can't really say what we do and how we do exactly. I'll be giving away too much, but it's very lean. It's very simple on the base level, but it affords me a really good lifestyle. It affords the people that work with me a really good lifestyle. But most importantly, what it does is it gives me time for my family. I got a call, like literally summer holidays, but just before the holidays, I got a call from my daughter's school saying she's bumped her head and she's not feeling well. Now imagine if I was in an office somewhere in the city with my suit and tie on, with that noose around my neck, my boss breathing down my throat, like, what's going on? Like, I need to go. I need to get my daughter. I'm like, you can't just get up and go. But now I can do that. I just left everything in the office. I said, guys, I need to go. My daughter's not good. And I left. It was like 12:30 in the afternoon, literally when the day's like you're in the middle of everything. And that's what's quite important to me. But LMC affords me that. And I like it that way.
So I'm guessing your personal life became a bit more of a motivation for you as well, because you were like, you know what, I don't necessarily need to have the same ambitions as other people or same kind of realistic goals, because for me that's not what I need. Like, there's a lot of people that have 10 million in their bank account but they're depressed and they have no family around them, they have no wife, kids. So I think it is definitely self-awareness, understanding yourself. But when you kind of got to that area where your family now, like you see them, you're there for any emergencies, where did that kind of desire for the next chapter come from? Because you're not stopping, you're going to Africa, you're going to Dubai. You could have said, you know what, I'm comfortable, that's it, let me remain with London and that's it. So you still had the hunger, but you adapted a new way of working. So explain that a little bit to me and the audience.
It's hard to really articulate exactly how that came about, but I thought, look.
But you as a person, you had that hunger. Like
100%.
You had achieved something, but you weren't like, I'm going to stop now. We see a lot of people like they just give up and they think, you know what, I've done enough now.
Yeah.
But you had done it in a way where you valued your family, you wanted to have that free time, but you also still were hungry in the business world. You just did it in a way that suited all areas of your life.
100%. I think the hunger was always there, as you said, you're right. But why stop? Some people just get into their comfort zones. I'm the kind of person where if I'm doing the same thing for too long, I don't feel right within myself. Like, even when I go on holiday or I'm going to go away, I never go for more than 7 to 10 days, because I get on the phone, my fingers start twitching. I want to check my emails. I need to start making calls. And, I'm quite, in that way, I get bored very easily and very quickly, and I don't like to switch off for too long. So as much as the family and work-life balance was important to me, I want to legacy build as well. I want to be able to go and do things in other countries. I want to grow the business. I want to make sure that if the children decide when they're older they want to be involved in this, they've got something there, and then it's spread across loads of different regions across the globe. And also I wanted to do things differently. Like I said, as I said, it's very cliche that, I'm a perfectionist, but also along with that, I want to do things differently to everybody else, because there's 100 other people doing what I do, but they're just not doing it the way I'm doing it, right? So for me, it was like, there's guys doing what I do, but they're not quite doing it like this. So how can I make it better? How can I expand it to more people across different regions? Because I'm doing it online anyway. So why don't I just go there and just keep growing it and see where it gets, And the rest is in Allah's hands. You do the work. And it grows.
And I think you are more conscious of profit versus revenue.
100%. Profit is so important. Like, because the thing is, I could turn over £500,000 a year, and my profit could be, 400 grand of that's profit, and it's only cost me 100 grand to run. Instead of having a £5 million business, and your profits are pretty much the same. Because sometimes the cost of transacting is so high that even though you've got a really high turnover, the percentages just don't make sense. So it's like, if I can still make, say 200% on my money every year, and it still affords me a great lifestyle, that's perfect, And if I can replicate that in other countries, then that will just multiply, and it'll essentially grow over time, and compound essentially. So this is why I've done that as well, A, for legacy building, B, I run the business in such a lean and in such a strategic manner that I can do that, and then I can take it to other places and replicate it, and it doesn't give me any more stress, because I've got people in those regions that are able to manage and run, with me overseeing it. Of course, I'll never fully be able to switch off. But one of my goals was, like, I remember when I was in my 20s, I wanted to retire when I was 30. I look back now and I laugh. And it's just one of those, again, very cliche things. By the time I'm 30, I just want to retire. It didn't happen for me at 30, and now I'm 36. When I was 30, then I hit 30, I was like, okay, I'll give myself another 5 years. Now I'm 36 and I'm thinking 40. But I think even then, when I hit 40, I don't think I'll ever fully switch off, because I don't think I can. And this is why I've just kept it growing.
Interesting. Okay. I want to talk about religion a little bit, because you mentioned it briefly at the beginning, and obviously having patience and trust in God. And I also know that you have a unique story about religion as well. So let's talk about the importance of religion for you, and how that's impacted your success, your career, your life.
Alhamdulillah, bro. I'm a Muslim. I come from a Christian background, and I became a Muslim when I was 18. And at the time, I used to have a lot of Muslim friends. I played cricket, county cricket, age group as a child, and I had a lot of Muslim friends. And I was interested in loads of different religions in general anyway. And I had a lot of Muslim friends who I played cricket with that would pray regularly and stuff like that. So it was very intriguing to me. And I felt like I wanted to as well. So I started looking at the religion. And actually, when I was younger, I was very had a big interest in like comparative religion. So being a Christian, I kind of knew my Bible quite well, and I'd try and debate with my friends about sort of religion, right? And I'd always speak to my Muslim friends, and they'd be like, whatever questions I asked them, I'd always get the answer. And I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to actually learn about their religion, so that when I'm debating them, I can actually give them, objective answers, rather than just things you hear online and stuff like that. So I started reading about Islam and other religions as well, and it really appealed to me, alhamdulillah. When I was 18, just before I was 19, I took my shahada. But faith is really, really, it's the center point of my life. I mean, even the way I run my business, and people that work with me will tell you the same. When it's time for prayer, we stop everything, we pray. People that work for me, or people when I work, when I'm in the office, Jummah, we're always at Jummah, never miss it. When we're out, we'll just pray. I think, so what I do is, rather than have my work my deen around my work, I work my work around my deen. So that comes first, because all rizq is from Allah, right? That's what I believe. And as long as you're putting in the effort, and you're putting your trust in Allah, I've found personally that everything I need and require just gets given, and it's just a center point in my life. And prayer, meditation, like I said, tawakkul, tadabbur, just thinking about the things that have been revealed to us. And actually, I was thinking about this the other day. Somebody asked me the question about do you have any role models or people that you looked up to? When I was a kid, I probably looked up to like sports people, like footballers and cricketers and stuff like that, right? But we don't have to, as Muslims, we don't have to look far. We've got the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was a merchant, a businessman in his own right, and he was the best of all of them. Like his manners, his integrity, so much so that the most powerful, most rich woman in all of Makkah proposed to him in marriage, because he was so impressive with the way he did business. And when I really contemplate these examples that we have, and also his Sahaba, his companions, some of them were very wealthy, very rich, very excellent business people. We have those examples there. So I look at that and I think, actually, Prophet ﷺ was a businessman, he was a merchant, and he was one of the best examples we can have. So I try and, I'm not saying I'm anything like him, nothing like him at all, but I try and implement some of his business practices, in the sense that pay people when they're due, be honest. If there's an issue with something, tell them, and just make sure that you do business in as clean a fashion as possible. But yeah, so the faith kind of has molded and shaped the way I do business as well. It's quite integral and important to me.
Mm-hmm. And that's amazing. And you said you reverted at 18.
Yeah.
You were lucky in the sense that you already had Muslim friends around you, so it didn't feel like a crazy transition. But what about your home life?
It was difficult. My parents weren't very happy with the decision. Not to say that my parents are overly practicing Christian, but obviously as a child, you've come home and you've said, and there's a lot of misconceptions in the media about Islam. I think when you really look into it, you can find out for yourself. I'd welcome anybody to go and read a Quran from cover to cover. You'll know. But for them it was difficult, a difficult pill to swallow. But I knew that That was the truth for me, at least. And it was rough, you know, when I was 18, 19, for my parents to hear that. There was a time where I wasn't living at home, partly because of my own arrogance and my own anger, and partly because maybe I had an argument with my dad, and, you know, things just went too far and I left. So that was quite difficult for me, and that was around the time that I'd started the business as well, you know, the first business. But I kept my faith and trust in Allah, and here I am. But yeah, it was definitely difficult for home life, and also in the early days I wasn't hanging around the right kind of people. They were Muslim, but a lot of guys were doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing as Muslims. So it took time for me to transition and grow as a Muslim. But yeah, that's kind of always been there in the background, and that's why it's so important to me.
Mm-hmm. So we talked about religion, we talked about family life, we talked about some of the things that you achieved. What I want to know is, you've been through a lot of adversity, you know, through the years, and you've conquered through, and you've kept your kind of business hat on throughout that process. But throughout everything, what would you say from your own perspective was your hardest battle? Out of everything, out of being in India, out of, you know, transitioning into the UK, out of all the other things that came along, you know, the hardship of early LMC, or, you know, everything that you went through, what would you say is your hardest battle that you're the most proud of, that you've kind of achieved and got through to the other side? Because sometimes when we go through problems in the moment, it feels like this is the end of the world and I'm never going to like get through this.
Alhamdulillah, bro, I'm not going to lie, like I feel really, really fortunate. I feel like even the really difficult times I've had are really nothing compared to what some people. I'm just very grateful. I like to think that I'm quite a mindful person, and I like to reflect on all the wonderful things I have. We have more than 99% of the people in this world. If you're earning 40 grand a year, you're in like the top 1% globally. Do you know what I mean? So like, and I'm earning way more than that, alhamdulillah. So from that perspective, struggles have been, like you've just pointed some of them out, but I don't really see, I see them as little scratches. In 2017, I got stabbed when I was abroad. I don't know if you remember me telling you this, but somebody put a beer bottle in my neck and I nearly died. Woke up in intensive care, and that kind of, you know, gave me a huge shift in the way I thought about life, because I thought I was invincible up until then. Because, you know, you're young, you're making money, you're spending money, you're going out with friends, you're just doing whatever you want, and you just feel like nothing can touch me. And in that one moment, I kind of realized, no, actually, you know, you're very fickle, and your life can go like this. You know, when it's your time, Allah will, when it's written for you, you're gone. So what are you going to really do with your life? And when I deepen now, I'm 36, I'll be 37 soon, and I'm like middle age. How long do people live? 70, 80? If you're lucky, you go to 90. When people get to 90, people say they've had a good life. So I've lived half my life if I really deep it. And when I think about it now, like the challenges, I can't really call them challenges, bro. My biggest achievements would be my children. I would say, like, alhamdulillah, they're beautiful children. That's a challenge in itself, having children, bringing them up in the right way, in the current environment, the way things are. You know, you worry about, you know, how their future is going to look. And I think part of that is also the reason why I'm so hungry for business, and I wanted to expand and go to different regions, because I worry about them and their financial well-being in the future. But they're probably my biggest achievements. Nothing we do in this life will count for anything. As a Muslim, I can only speak as a Muslim, right? True success, we will never achieve in this lifetime. Because if you truly believe in Allah, and if you believe in the hereafter, that is true success. Here, nothing you will achieve, you're going to leave it here. When you get put 6 foot down in the ground, all of your possessions, all of your money, your cars, your properties, your assets, they just get transferred over, right? So what's true success? We will spend more time in that ground than we do on top of it, alive, when we're dead. So for me, that is what I'm working towards. Yeah, the money's important. And, you know, Allah said, tie your camel, right? Don't just leave it and walk off and trust that everything will be okay. You've got to do things in order to survive in this, you know, doing business. Like I said, the Prophet ﷺ was a merchant. He was a businessman in his own right, and very, very good and successful at it as well. So when you deep it, like nothing we achieve here will be is success, but it's just worldly success. It's materialistic success that will give us some happiness and some comforts. But for me, true success, I will never achieve it here. This is why I don't think so deeply about 5 million, 10 million. I don't have a figure in my mind. If I can make a decent living where I don't have to put my hands out to anybody, I can make sure the people around me are paid, they're looked after, my children have a good future, I'm happy. And yeah, the business does amazing. It does really well. But that's true success for me. What am I doing for that, you know, for the hereafter? Because that's where I'm going to spend most of my time. And that's what, you know, our true success will be when what it all boils down to. And that's why, again, it comes to the prayers, you know, I'm not saying, I do not want to sound exorbitantly pious here, bro, or, you know, or gratuitously woke. I am not.
Yeah, but it's a core foundation of your life.
100%.
You live it day in, day out.
100%. So that for me is like what I think is the most important thing, and that's, I think, keeps me level ground and on, you know, sort of grounded, in the sense that, because you can make a lot of money, like going back to what I said, like when I got stabbed and I was in hospital, I woke up, I never thought that would happen to me. You know, I remember when I was on the floor, I was bleeding, and I took my watch off, I gave it to my brother, I said, give this to Zach, my son. In that moment, I thought I was gone, and nothing would have meant anything. All the money in the bank, all my assets would have meant nothing if I hadn't returned home alive. Because that's not going to give my children happiness. Their dad's gone. That's going to give my wife any peace. Her husband's gone. You know, what's the bigger picture here? It's them. It's being there for them, being able to provide for them, but also having some kind of preparation for the life after this.
Wow, that was powerful, to say the least. And you actually answered one of my next questions, which is, what does success mean to you? Which is great that you kind of broke it down. I've never heard it broken down like that, in terms of your life and death. And it's such a simple mistake that most people do. We get caught up in the worldly matters.
To elaborate on what you just said about success, I'm not saying that that's the only thing that you have to be worried about. That's really, really, as a Muslim, for me, I can only speak for myself, and as a Muslim, right? That is our ultimate success. But that doesn't mean you can't go out and do business, make money. It's important. For me, it's how do I link that back to goodness? So when I do good in business, I make dua, right? I don't ask anybody for anything. I ask Allah for everything. When I make dua, I say to Allah, Ya Allah, give me barakah and give me success in my work so that I can be useful to you, to the ummah. How can you link that back to being useful?
Giving back in the right ways.
Giving back in the right ways, with the right intention, you know? And I feel that really helps in my business and everybody else I've spoken to. Like, if you can link your success back to Allah and being good for people, not just Muslims, people in general that are less better off than you, I think that really gives it automatically, bro. Everything just falls into place, and you just, there's some months I'm stressing. You'll know, running a business, like, cash flow can be a problem. You need to pay for things. You need to pay staff. You need to pay for your office, running costs. And there's not enough money there. The VAT bill's coming up, you know, your annual tax returns coming. You got to pay your taxes. Somehow, alhamdulillah, it just gets sorted. It's fine. And, you know, I'm waiting on an invoice that hasn't been paid. The money drops and everything's fine. It's not always nice to be in that situation, but like I said, that success is important. But also, be the best as a Muslim. You should be the best at what you do. 100%. Like, if you're in the property game, try to be the best you can be in that game. If you're doing the social media thing, you're managing people's socials, you're producing content, whatever it is, be the best at that, because you're not only being a good role model at the same time, you're also excelling in your field, and you'll get recognized as that, right? So that's quite important as well. But it's not the most important thing, 100%. I think, anyway.
I really like that. I want to talk about the property market a little bit, or, you know, the challenges that the new generation have in investing in property in London, or even the UK in some ways. How, I know you're a man that invests in a lot of different areas, random areas, which we'll go into as well. But where I'm going is, obviously you sell property day in, day out, right? Mm-hmm. And obviously to your clients, you have to sell them the benefits of why they should buy a property. Yeah. But as a person, as an individual, away from your business, how do you feel about property as an investment? And do you advise that, you know, young people today should still have that in their mind of, you know what, I need to get a property in London?
Yeah, I'll tell you something really interesting. Like I said earlier, I know multimillionaires, I know billionaires, and pretty much anybody and everybody that has money, like I'm talking serious money, not people flexing on the gram. I'm talking about serious business people, people with serious money. Pretty much 99% of the ones I know all have assets that are property related, either commercial property or residential property. They all have money in bricks and mortar. So if you can invest in property, worst case, if you can't afford in London, go outside of London. Look at fringe areas, fringe towns that have a strong rental market, strong rental demand. You can go outside of London and do that. Your money will always be safe. The worst case, you hold it for 10 years and you make a little bit, but you will never lose it. With inflation and stuff like that as well, the money you have in the bank is always going to get eroded over time. But it's better in the property because you can get some residual income in the sense that you can get some rental revenue, but at the same time you'll also have the potential for growth, especially if you're playing the long game. Property can be the short game, but flipping properties and stuff can be it can be risky business. You can make a lot of money doing it, but actually owning and holding assets in the property, if you look at it in the long-term perspective, you'll always make money, especially in London. I mean, I think I was looking at trends recently, and pretty much anything you buy in London will double every 10 years, there or thereabouts. So if you invest £500,000 now, in 10 years time, it should be worth around £1 million. I mean, I've done it. I've bought physical properties where I didn't want to buy it, but it got it cheap, 200-300 grand. Then I'll way over £500,000 in value, and they've just been there rented, making a bit of rental revenue, and they've doubled. Now, that's not going to make me a multi-millionaire overnight. If you've only got, like, say you got 10, 12 properties, it might take you 10, 15 years to do that. But it's a really good fallback, So yeah, I would definitely recommend young people to look at the property market, especially if you're a bit more inclined towards the longer game. I think there's a lot of growth potential there. Look at commercial property is definitely something I'd recommend people to get into, because people think about buying flats and houses, right, and renting them for rental revenue. Buying a flat or a house has its merits, but there's a lot of hassle that comes with that, because if anything goes wrong, you have to fix that issue. Whereas with the commercial property, you buy a shop or you buy a building which has a shop, maybe has one flat above or two flats above. You give that shop on a lease for 10 years, you don't have to worry. You're just getting your rental revenue in. It's going to be a decent amount. Have rent reviews in there so that the rent goes up every 4, 5, 6 years, however long. And it's hands off. And that will grow. As the rent grows, commercial property is a bit different to residential property, because residential property is valued differently to commercial. Commercial property is valued on the rental revenue. So the more the rent you receive on it, the higher the value is assigned to that specific unit. But over time, rents will go up anyway. And commercial property is a lot easier to actually finance and also to get in terms of managing. So you don't have to do as much work. Whoever gets a lease, the person that's in there has to maintain the property. They have to do all the work rather than you having to do the work. And as the rent goes up over time, your property value goes up, and you can then leverage against that to buy more. Okay, I mean, that's a very long. We could talk about that for hours. I wouldn't want to go into that, but I would never discourage a young person from looking at owning property because I feel like it's robust, it's stable, and especially in London, if you're buying something, you'll always make money in the long run.
And let's talk about alternative ways of investing, because obviously, property is always, I think it's one of those things where I think most people would say that it's a good investment
100%.
At any point in your life. But obviously not everyone has those opportunities and they're not in a position to necessarily buy a house, and maybe they're on their way to doing that. What are some other kind of investment strategies that you've done over the years?
I've done a lot of things. So like I said, stems back to the stock market. Buy companies that you like, buy them when they're down. When there's a crash, just buy and hold. Again, they'll double over time. It's more risky. Please don't take this as investment advice, but the stock market's a great place to start, because you can start with very small amounts of money. You can start with £500 rather than £500,000, right? So you can start with £500, put it into something that you like, Tesla, for example, or anything that you, as an example, and just watch it grow and give it time. So that's a good place. Foreign exchange, I'd say, is a little bit more technical, so maybe avoid that. Watches are great. The reason I like watches is because you need to know what you're doing with watches, but I think watches are great investments because if you can buy certain models, they will increase in value because they're highly sought after. And also it's cash on your wrist, and it's very easy for you to, let's just say you will watch for 10,000, right? That's 10,000 on your wrist. It'll appreciate over time, but also think about liquidity in that. You can sell a Rolex pretty much anywhere in the world at any given time. You walk into a jeweler's and they'll buy it. So it's very easy to liquidate as well. So watches are great. Gold is great. I recently got into the whole Pokemon space. We were talking about this, right? So I've got a number of graded cards, like PSA 10 cards, which have there's a bit of a crash going on at the moment, and there was recently as well. So I just bought up a bunch of highly sought after cards at reduced rates. But I also buy like Pokemon sealed product. Like, this is going to sound crazy coming from a property guy, right? But if you look at the history of Pokemon, sealed products that they sell, like booster boxes and special collection premium boxes, etc., they have always gone up in price, right? So if you put 10,000 now in sealed Pokemon product, I can pretty much guarantee in 10 years time it'll have double, tripled in value. I bought stuff at like a few years ago, like 200 quid, and they're now, okay, it's just one example of a box of like booster packs, 36 packs in one box, paid £200 for it, it's now worth 700. If I'd bought 50 of them, for example, you think about the growth, you can't get that in a property. But that's a lot more accessible as well. Think about it, because a young 18, 19-year-old might not have 30, 40, 50 grand as a deposit on a house, but to scrape together a few £1,000 and then just buy these and sit on them, or hold them for a while, you'll make money that way as well. So these are some of the things. I mean, with the Pokemon side, I was quite cheeky about it. So I was buying a lot of Pokemon product and it was costing me like retail price. I said, how can I become a distributor? So I then got in touch with Pokemon Company, and I can't be a distributor because I'd have to buy a crazy amount of stock every month in order to have distribution rights in the UK. So it's like, okay, what's the next step then? And the next step was retailing. So how can I become a retailer? So I had a business running from before, and I contacted the UK distributors for Pokemon, and they gave me a license to retail. So the same thing that would cost me £145 in the shop, for example, a box, I can buy for £75 plus VAT. And I buy them. We sell some of them, but a lot of them just go into a sealed collection, and I'll sit on them when my kids are 9 and 10, 8 and 10. My son will be 9 next month, in October actually, sorry. And I'll just keep it till they're in their 20s. And those things I know for a fact will have tripled in value by that point, because the trend is that over the last 25 years, anything you bought that's Pokemon related will have gone up in value over time.
That was a great breakdown and realistic advice that people can actually implement today. Where did you get that from? Like, have you always just been curious?
I've always been really curious. I've always been intrigued by sort of really hyper successful business people in this world. I've read a lot of autobiographies, a bunch of them, Alan Sugar being the first one. The Apprentice was something I used to watch a lot. And I used to see these guys on The Apprentice and I'd be like, I could do that. And people used to tell me as well, you can do that. And then I applied. And then when I saw the process, and I was just like, I'm not going to do this. But I was very interested in that, not the current version of the show. I'm talking about like 10 years, 12 years ago, 15 years ago. I've always been intrigued by the way people generate money. Like when I look at my own business now, it's like we generate revenue out of thin air. And that's crazy to think about it. Like, the current digital climate allows us to do that. But yeah, I've always just been intrigued by what you can buy that will be an asset. I hate spending money on things that I know will depreciate. And I've always just looked into things. So like the watches I was talking about, like not every watch you buy will go up in value, right? You can pick up something for 20 grand now and it'll be worth, watches are a bit down at the moment as well, actually, coincidentally with the Pokemon thing. But, I bought a watch last year, 18,000. I paid way over retail for it. The watch only retails for like 12.5 grand, but you can't get it from Rolex. You have to buy it on the grey market, right? And I bought it in November, and in April, it was worth £7,000 more. I could have sold it. I didn't. I held on to it because it's something I wanted in my collection. But just give you an example how I put 18,000 into something and I made 7-8 grand back like in no time had I sold it. But I knew that was the trend anyway with that. But I really, when I look at something as an asset class, I really get into it and I do a lot of research. I really try and find out. I speak to people that know about it as well. This is the great thing about the times we live in now. If you really want to, you have access to the right people to ask them about anything. Like if I wanted to know about, social media strategy, I'm sitting with you. I can ask you. You can tell me, right? If I want to speak to somebody about property development, there's so many people that have access to it. And this digital world, we can reach out to people and you can network and meet the right people to do pretty much anything. And that's what I do. When I'm interested in something, I'll speak to somebody that knows about it. I'll spend time researching, and I recommend this to all young people. If you're interested in something, go and research.
You have to be inquisitive. You have to be willing to ask the question.
100%. Put yourself out there, ask the right people, and surround yourself with the right people. I remember when I was like 16, 17, one of my good friends, his dad was involved in the property market, right? Property game. And we'd sit around with them in their house and his friends would come around and they were discussing like hundreds of thousands of pounds. Like in the beginning, it was like, wow, these guys are talking like 100 grand, 200 grand. My guys, dripped out in Gucci and Versace. And in the beginning, it was like, whoa, this is crazy. But the more I spent time around these people, those figures just became monotonous. So now when somebody even says like $1 million,
You don't flinch.
I don't twitch. It doesn't excite me. But it's because I surrounded myself around those people. Do you see what I'm saying? And it just became the norm. So I think, yeah, definitely for young people, that'd be one really good piece of advice. Surround yourself around people and don't be afraid to learn. Ask people that have done something and are good at it and successful at it, how they did it, or to give you advice. Because there's so much value in that. People that have already been there. I wish I'd met somebody like myself when I was 18. But there was nobody around for me to ask. I had to learn the hard way. So now when I have young people around me, I try and make sure that I can mentor them in a way and give them what I didn't have. But yeah, definitely reach out to people that are in the space that you want to be in. Be inquisitive, ask the right questions, and don't be afraid to network. It's so important.
Yeah, I think even when I look back at myself as a child, like I remember that, I was always asking those questions. And, like people nowadays, they're so caught up in the glitz and glamour. So the first thing they would ask a successful person, if they have the courage, is what do you make? But that question is so like subjective, because if I ask you what you make, it could be what your yearly salary is, it could be what your end of year dividends check is, it could be what your net worth is. There's so many like ways I could inflate that number just to make myself feel better or look good. But rather asking, how did you get here? Especially if you know that they followed a path that maybe you want to go into. Like, for example, you talked about property, you talked about Pokemon. Maybe there's people out there that are right now thinking, a lot about, okay, I want to get into property. So if you know someone that has bought property, ask them that question, because they've got to that end goal that you want to get to, as opposed to the fairy number that we get caught up in.
Definitely. I do find though that unfortunately, there's a lack of role models and people that you can ask, because a lot of people, unfortunately, especially I can only talk for the property game, that the people don't really want to share the real juicy bits that are available, in terms of information. Unfortunately, there's a lack of that out there, but you still have to go and find, you have to go and try and talk to the right people to sort of get the information. And it's quite interesting, actually. A lot of people don't realize the work and the struggles you have, the L's you take before you have the W's. I'll give you an example. I had a guy that came for work experience. It was several years ago, and I was still dabbling in the penny stock market, right? And he came in one morning, young guy, 16, 17 years old. Came and sat next to me. I said, look, I'm trading. Do you want to have a look at how it's done? He's like, yeah, I'd be interested. He was there to do like admin work, property related stuff. So market opens in US about 9:30 a.m. local time. It's about 2:30 p.m. Our time, right? UK time. And the market opened, and by 2:40, so 10 minutes in, I'd made $3,000. Yeah, like $5,000 odd. It was like $3,000. He just literally, I'd placed the trade, it's gone up. He can see the profit and loss. I've closed the trade in 10 minutes. I'm done for the day. And he was sat there dumbfounded, like, you just made 3 bags? I was like, yeah, I just made 3 bags. But guess what? It's taken me 10 years to learn how to make 3 bags in 10 minutes. And there's times where I've lost 30 bags in one trade. would you be able to cope with losing 30 bags, you know, in literally in 1 minute, in 2 minutes, 10 minutes? And he's like, no.
Everything looks better from the outside.
Exactly. The grass is always greener, right? So then I sat down with him and I said, look, he's like, I don't want to do nothing. I'm not going uni. I'm not doing uni to teach me this. I said, look, it's not that simple. You don't sit here and press a few buttons and all of a sudden you make this kind of money on a daily basis. It takes a lot of work and effort, and it's actually a lot of heartache before you get to the, you know, the success. And a lot of people can't cope with that. I said, would you be able to cope with it? Like, be realistic about it. And he's like, probably not. So I said, look, just continue doing what you're doing and look at this on the side. I'm not discouraging you from doing it, but do it maybe part-time with smaller amounts of money. Don't say to me that I don't want to go to university. I don't want to do anything else because this is like the best thing since sliced bread. Because it's not. Because you might not have the aptitude for it. Or you might not even enjoy it. You might do it because you think it makes you loads of money.
But emotionally you can't handle it.
Emotionally you can't handle it. Or you might just not like it. Some people don't like sitting in front of a screen and just typing away and doing stuff. They want to be active. They want to be out. I was like, you're so young, you still haven't discovered yourself, you know? I wanted to be an architect, but actually now I can employ them. And I'd hate, now when I think about it, I'd hate to be sat in an office, like just drawing stuff and measuring stuff out and going on sites and doing all these measurements.
The world's changed as well so much, isn't it?
100%.
Anyway, Barry, I'm sure we can go for hours,
Sure
but obviously we've both got busy schedules after this. My final question, and it can also link to, you know, any final message you have for the audience. But my final question is, people are obsessed now with overnight success. They're obsessed with getting rich overnight, looking rich as opposed to being rich. And a big part of that is obviously social media and the changes that the world has seen. What's your advice to anyone that is now sitting in their room watching this and they feel like, oh, you know what, I haven't really achieved much because I've seen this person with the Rolex, I've seen this person with the car, I've seen this person on social media talking about this success, and that makes them feel kind of vulnerable and inadequate. That's a great word, inadequate. So what's your advice to them, and any final message as well to the audience?
My advice to young people, particularly watching this, is don't believe everything you see online. You've probably heard this from many other people before, and I'm not going to be the last person to say it, but that's all a facade. There are some credible people online that flex, that actually have money, but they're few and far between. People that have real wealth, have real money, are not on social media. They don't have the time. They just don't have the time. Stay in your own lane. Really, really be. It comes down to being grateful. If you're grateful for what you have in your life, like I said, like living here in this country and in the West anywhere, like we're better than 90%, better off than more than 90% of the planet. So just have that gratitude to begin with. Secondly, don't watch what anybody else is doing. If I was to compare myself to some of the people I know, bro, I'd be depressed. Like seriously, despite all of my material success, if I was to compare myself to some of the people I know, I wouldn't want to get out of bed in the morning.
It never ends.
What's the point?
Yeah.
Because no matter how much you achieve or how much you make or whatever Rolex you have or whatever car you drive, you get a Huracan, you want an Aventador. Do you see what I'm saying? You get an Aventador, next thing you want
human nature.
You want a Bugatti, you want a Chiron. Like it's just never going to be enough. So just be grateful. Number one, I say to all young people, be grateful for what you have. Don't watch anybody else. Most of what you see online is fake. It's not genuine. There are some credible people online that do flex. I'm not going to take that away from them. But, you know, stay in your own lane. Things take time. Real business takes time to build. There are some outliers and some exceptions where you can launch something and bang, it just does really well. I'm not taking that away either. That can exist. But in a majority of cases, business and really making wealth, and wealth that's sustainable, that will last and will have impact in the long term, longevity takes time to build. Because if business was simple, anybody and everybody would be doing it, and everybody would be like sitting in the Bahamas, sipping on their mocktails or cocktails or whatever, right? And they wouldn't have care for anything in the world. But it's not that simple. This is why people are still grinding. That's why I'm still doing it. I'm going to be.
And also, your business can be successful, but you as a director may not. Like often, you come last.
Bro, I know people genuinely that are worth 50 million in assets, maybe 5 million in cash, like highly liquid, and they've got a huge asset base, right? They're depressed, bro. Wallahi, I'm not lying to you. I know somebody that's worth 50 million in just property, has no family life, has no social life with his children, his wife, and they're just depressed, bro. So it doesn't, the bottom balance, the figure in your bank account does not determine your level of satisfaction and happiness. Because I've been there. Like I said, when I got stabbed, I thought I had everything, but nothing meant anything in that moment. So that's one piece of advice. Don't watch what anyone is doing. Don't be fooled by everything online, and just take your time. Things will take time, but if you persevere and you're consistent at it, then you'll be fine in the long run, inshallah. That's my main advice, and I'd say the same to my kids as well. Don't watch anybody, just do your own thing.
100%. I know you're not you're not crazy about social media, but you do have the platforms there if anyone doesn't want to follow. So where's the best place for everyone to check you out? And obviously for LMC as well, if anyone's interested in kind of becoming a customer or finding out more details, why don't you kind of give us those?
Yeah, you can reach me on Instagram, mr.realestate.london. It's a bit of a long one. I'm sure you can
put it in the description.
Pop it in the description. LinkedIn, if you look up LMC Capital, we've got LMC Capital Africa, Middle East and UK. So just look us up, hit one of us up on there. You'll find the staff, you find myself. You can hit me up on the socials, or the website, lmccapital.co.uk. Yeah, get in touch.
And if I'm someone that wants to buy a property, how simple is the process? If I just know I want to buy something and I want to come to you guys, what's the process like? It's
very simple. Just get in touch, drop us an email, give us a call, WhatsApp. We've also got WhatsApp for business. Drop us a message. What we do is we go through a very quick qualification process, work out what your finances are, what you can afford, what areas you're looking in, and then we'll just match you with the best thing. Next day, just to do a viewing. I mean, I was in Ghana recently, and while I was in Ghana, I had met somebody there, and they'd recommended somebody to me who was in London, and my team were doing viewings here with that client in London. So it was that instant. It was the next day. So, and they've put in an offer, and that's going through now. So within 6 weeks they'll be done. So it can be really simple and quick. Just know what your finances are. But we'll ask you all the right questions, send you an email, and we can just communicate. It's very simple, straightforward, bro.
Perfect. Any final message?
No.
Did you enjoy the podcast?
I did enjoy it. Thank you for having me on, bro.
No, pleasure. Pleasure's all mine, and I hope you all enjoyed watching this as well. Be sure to subscribe, like, comment, check out Barry as well, and support him. And if you're interested in buying property, check out LMC as well. And we'll see you guys soon.